Christian, I noticed that there is a sort of a misunderstanding um, about what sustainability is. Some people do still have this impression that when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about the environmental dimension of sustainability. But in your report, you look at the various dimensions of sustainability, right? That is the economic, the social, and and the environmental as well. So it's really a collection of data on all dimensions of what sustainability is. And when we talk about data, here I'm very curious. You know, there is a huge difference between statistics, numbers, and data. Data can be collecting articles that talk about sports or specific industries in the sport world, etc., etc. So data not necessarily is numbers. So do you collect both statistics and data and then you elaborate it? How do you proceed in
Yes,
collecting the
exactly.
various
So
dimensions of sustainability and sport?
yes, so starting with the first part of your question, that's totally right. We it's really depending on who you're talking to. So there are many people when you come up with sustainability, they associate it with environmental sustainability. But on the other hand, what we see very often is in the sports industry, especially, is that it's still being associated with social topics, so community development,
Hmm.
actions taken in the community for the fans, and sportive action, so keeping the youth active and developing something in their fan base. So that's what usually and historically being very close to the sports industry, to the clubs, maybe, because obviously active active lifestyle and well-being is very close and associated with sports, so that's been always been a very natural fit. And on the other hand, we have this category where people think, yeah, environmental is more about carbon footprint and water consumptions. But what we've done is we've created or we applied the concept of ESG from the financial industry into the sports industry. And we even drilled it a little bit up through the process when we set up the GSBS. We noticed that the sports industry is indeed nowadays a business, and it's very similar to other industries. But on the other hand, it still has its specialities. So that's why we also created the fourth pillar, where we're also looking at the financial performance. So how healthy is this sports organization? How profitable is it? Is what we're also looking at. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at investment. We're looking at does the organization have maybe a dedicated department or employee for this topic that pushing this day to day, or is it, with all due respect, maybe someone doing on the side for half a day, and it's more on a communication based? Because as we both know, you need to have a certain skill set to push things really forward. While you can have a real love and passion for something, but if you don't have the actual skill set to do something also from a technical perspective, sorry, it is more challenging. So we're also looking at, or if you don't have skill sets in house, do you maybe work with external supporters like consultancies, or is your data being evaluated and assured externally, or have you conducted this all by yourself and we have to believe you with your data? So that's is very, very important. And we nowadays, yes, we see that the information is very diverse, and it's not enough to have just your water consumption available. Even that's sometimes being a challenge. And on the other hand, yes, you are also very right. Like always, data is and it's also maybe like sustainability itself. So if you talk about data, you have different understandings about data. So on the one hand, it's the numbers, so carbon footprints, water consumptions. It's where it's more simple, maybe, because this is just the data. But what are you drawing out of it? Which learnings can draw out of it? And also, what we are nowadays working on is, and that's again, maybe for the near future more, but what correlations can we learn out of certain data sets and the results of it? So I've been asked, for example, from some journalists, or can you see that better sustainability ratings maybe attract better sponsorships or other correlations where it's an early stage and we really try to understand the data better and better. And to be honest with you, in the beginning, it was really, again, a rocky road. We've had to deal with whatever we've been able to collect. But nowadays, it's really starting to become real fun because there is much more data available, and yeah, data in various versions of numbers, qualities, policies, and strategies. So that's when I'm talking about data, that's maybe also a little bit broader term than might others do.
So even for the report, data is either collected because it's publicly available, or it is given directly to you by the various industries, companies, and so on that you are analyzing. Am I correct?
Exactly. So we aim to work with the organizations directly because we want, on the one hand, to have the opportunity to understand them and evaluate them as good as possible. And all of the organizations, been always actively invited, and they're all aware of what we are doing. And then there is a set of organizations that we believe is nowadays so big, so influential on a global scale that it is their modern responsibility towards society. At least that's what we and many others believe, to become transparent and really accountable for their actions. How do they treat their employees and so on? And we believe that transparency should be normal by now. And therefore, there is a certain set of organizations that we are evaluating on publicly available data, but they're always invited to present and provide more information. So it's really up to them. And this number is growing over the years. We are constantly growing this number, but also, and that's a positive thing, is that more and more organizations actively nowadays coming to us. We have this year the first time a football club from Brazil, where I'm really excited that they came to us. They wanted to present to the world and to European football clubs and so on what they are actually doing. Or we have the
Wow.
first time a cricket team from Dubai, which is another adding to our portfolio, if I'm allowed to say so, which is really really exciting. And that's what makes me so excited, is that it's a constant learning from these different people that you meet, and it's so fruitful.
Wow, this is exciting. Um, Christian, now we move to the second part of this conversation we're having, which is structured in past, present, and future. Okay? And I would like to ask you, once upon a time, looking back at your career in sports sustainability and management, how have your past actions shaped today's landscape of sustainability in inclusion and also accountability? You know, inclusion, fairness in business strategies, and equity is one of my things. I champion it. So I'm really curious to know how your past actions have shaped somehow the landscape in
Um,
inclusion.
that's a very good question, but also not that easy to answer, to be honest,
No.
because with, as I mentioned earlier, with what we are doing, we are able to raise awareness and we are able to raise the bar for normality. So, what should be in your organization normal by now, and what are other organizations maybe doing, and you haven't done it yet, and so we are no governance body. We can't make the rules, and that's not what we're aiming for. We are evaluating the status quo. And what we see is that in different aspects, but I think and hope also in diversity and inclusion and the social dimension of sport, that we can set a certain bar for the organizations and telling them that's what's been expected from you nowadays. You should have this in place. And the direct outcome of it is always hard to evaluate. What is when we have the connections with the organizations directly, then we sometimes learn that, oh, we've done this because you asked us to. And that's what we see, and that's what is really the beauty of things, where we actually see the outcome of
Impact.
our work at the end. What we sometimes we see in certain sustainability reports, for example, that we see, oh, things appeared from last year, it wasn't there, and this year this data is available. And obviously this is on the environmental topics, but also on the social dimension of it. Yeah, I want to avoid to say that we've done something that has changed actually directly, so that's hard to really evaluate. But the real beauty of it is that we can drive change through our questions that we raise and awareness, I think. So that's
So,
what we aim for.
this is a way of impacting, and therefore, looking at the present as a CEO of the Global Sustainability Benchmark in Sports, what other innovative strategies are you using to either collect data and, in any case, also in reporting to promote social equity within sustainability initiatives?
This one of the strategies, if I'm allowed to say so, is obviously collaborating and really engaging with different stakeholders, because once we see that other stakeholders, that for example the big sponsors, that putting the big money into the sports industry to be associated with the sport of success and so on, if we can really achieve an understanding in this stakeholder group that they have an impact and they have a responsibility for different dimensions of sustainability in these organizations that they are sponsoring, that they, with their own performance and with their own ability to drive change into these sports organizations, they can make a big impact. That's one of the big aims we have. So working with these different stakeholder groups is very important, because they have the actual power to drive change. Because if the first organization that might say, we are not going to renew our sponsorship deal with a certain organization because we don't like how they behave, we don't like how they treat their people. Maybe I'm not saying that that's the case anywhere, but
Mhm.
if a sponsorship organization that is so powerful is stepping up and saying, we want you to have diversity on your board, we want you to have a certain set of diversity in your employees or in your workforce, we expect this from you because that's how our society looks like. And we believe that's the normality of 2024 or the 21st century. This will become very powerful. And that's obviously where we play a role, on the one hand, making these organizations aware of it. I've been on another podcast some weeks ago, and after that, I've been approached from people around the world. And the first time, even from really big corporations, they were like, "Oh, we never thought about sport and sustainability as something that can be put together." And since then, I've been on many calls to introducing them to what we are doing, and it's kind of a development at the end. And I think understanding the power of different stakeholder groups is very important, and using this power united and putting some pressure on the sports industry, I think is nothing wrong with it.
And so you mentioned already something towards a vision towards the future. And I would like to ask you, therefore, Christian, and this is a almost last question that I would like to hear your ideas about and vision. Now, if you were 20 years old in the year 2071, what sustainable future would you envision for the sports industry? And also, what actions should you and the global sustainability benchmark on sports prioritize now to achieve that vision?
That's a very tough question, as you can imagine, or as you. That's why a smart woman like you is putting it out there. But obviously, I think with this, and I know your heart is very much with the social dimension of sustainability. I think in 2071, I think we will see probably a lot of impact from climate change, and I think, and that's probably the the big risk and the big threat for sports with air pollution. Athletes maybe not being able to conduct their outdoor sports
Yeah.
anymore, with which we've seen in different shapes and forms, or already even over the last months in the global sport activities, and having those different impacts is probably the biggest threat to sport in general. So that's what we have to understand. And if I would be 20, I'm not sure if when I think of myself being
Yeah.
20, I'm not sure if I would be then being capable of really understanding it. To be honest, nowadays I think modern young people are much smarter than I was when I was 20. To be honest, so therefore. I would hope that I would be able of understanding the situation, and also being able to do, and that's what I sometimes feel ashamed for, that I'm not being able to do something better when I was younger. So nowadays the younger generation is much more accountable for their own actions also. I know so many young people being vegan, being very cautious about certain challenges of our modern society, which I probably wasn't at 20, to be very honest. I was probably very ignorant. And therefore, I would expect sustainability in sports being able to, or being at a point where, for example, emissions being really only being the unavoidable emissions being caused. And but it's that's the big challenge of this, is that sport isn't isolated like all the other industries. So sport, as I mentioned earlier, has to move. People have to come together to conduct sport. I would hope that in 2070, I'm not sure if I will be alive by then, but that we will have mobility, transportation that is able to transport the people, the athletes, without causing emissions anymore. So I've been on an event by the BBC on Monday, and Dale Vince, the CEO of, or the, I think the owner of the Forest Green Rovers, for example, mentioned, and he is also a entrepreneur. He mentioned that there will be electric planes very soon. So obviously, this could be something really big, because this transport and traveling is yeah, the spectator and fan travel is the biggest chunk in the emissions, for example, in the sports industry. And making transportation more sustainable, or even completely sustainable. More sustainable is always a very soft term. That would be the big challenge. And I would hope that I wouldn't have to think about, if I would go to a football match in 2071, to think about, oh, how do I get there?
Yeah.
Which transportation shall I use? So that it would be a straightforward thing. On the one hand, the options would be there, and the options would be sustainable. So being able to get there is probably one of the big challenges. So therefore, again, I'm not sure if I would be one of the big change makers, because again, I was very ignorant when I was 20 myself. But I would hope for people like you and me, and the decision makers of nowadays, taking the right decisions, understanding the needs of the time, so that the generations to come will don't have to face the challenges that we are facing nowadays. I think that's the big challenge.
Yes, indeed. And when it comes to transportation through electricity or else, let's hope that if we find solutions that are not polluting, that are not using water, because there is going to be not necessarily enough water in the future.
Yeah,
And
another big topic. Yes.
yeah, so that's another big topic. But we're going to discuss about it another time, because there are also sports that use water, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
um, Christian, I asked you so many questions, and now I would like you to ask a question to yourself. And what would be the answer you're giving to your own question?
I thought about this, and I think the biggest question is, what can we do better? Where can you do better? What can you do different? And I think it is a question of, and again, I started with overstretching phrases, and I will end it with it. I think collaboration is key. So that's why what's the beauty of me having the chance to talking to the fantastic Daniela Bas, because we have different mindsets, we have different expertises, and it's very important to bring together such people and using their knowledge for the better. And that's all I think what it is about, and also what I try really to foster with the GSBS. So therefore, I always question myself literally every day, what can I do better? And I'm not saying that I have always the answers, but it is very important to understand how can we help each other better. And as we discussed a little bit earlier before the podcast, I'm always happy to understand how can I help others, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations in the future, Daniela. So therefore, I think, what can I do better? And I'm not sure if I have the answer.
This is something that many people ask themselves. This is a difficult question when we tend to analyze ourselves too much. As you said initially, you tended to
Exactly.
be very strict with yourself. So, Christian Hartmann, I know that people who would like to interact with you can find your profile also in LinkedIn. So, that's the easiest way, probably. And I thank you very much for this lovely conversation. I love sports from the policy perspective and the social dimension perspective, and you have helped me to understand more about other ways of supporting and informing the industry of sports and others as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, giving me the chance to talk to you. And yeah, my pleasure. Have a good day.
As I wrap up this episode, my heartfelt gratitude to today's guest and to all of you. Join me for the next episode as we delve deeper with special guests, uncovering thought-provoking insights and actionable steps, paving the way for a brighter, inclusive, sustainable tomorrow. Thanks also to Damian Morton, music, and Maria Cortez Gagliano, social media. Don't miss out next episode on shaping the future we aspire to. Ciao, ciao!